Welcome to the Pharmacy Inspection Podcast, where we discuss topics related to sterile and non-sterile compounding pharmacy in an effort to promote compliance and increase quality. The Pharmacy Inspection Podcast is a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network, delivering quality and meaningful conversations and discussions about our pharmacy industry and the critical role pharmacists play in our healthcare systems. Learn more at pharmacypodcast.com. Please welcome your hosts, Bryan Prince and Seth DePasquale.
Hello to all of our Pharmacy Podcast friends and colleagues, and welcome to another episode of the Pharmacy Inspection Podcast. My name is Bryan Prince, and I'm here live at Componders on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. I'm here with my good friends, Jeanine and Daniel from Vitae Industries, and really what we're looking at here is the next level, the next generation of compounding pharmacy technology, and I don't want to steal their thunder, so I'm going to let them introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about their technology.
Thanks, Bryan. Really appreciate the kind introduction. Like you mentioned, really, our technology we see is bringing compounding into the 21st century, bringing automation we see happening in a lot of other fields to the practice of making personalized medications, where there's a real need for a lot of flexibility, but a lot of it's being done manually and in a labor-intensive way that's very tedious, and we see an opportunity to bring 3D printing technology to not only automate the process, but still allow the true personalization that makes the field really important to patients today.
Absolutely, and we're also joined with Daniel from Vitae, so I'm going to let him step in, introduce himself, and tell us a little bit about his role and some of the technology from his perspective as well.
Thanks for that intro there. This is Daniel, and we've developed a 3D printing platform which allows a pharmacist to more easily produce a wide variety of dosage forms ranging from gummies to troches, suppositories, all on one machine. It changes the workflow and how a pharmacist works, where now they can just prepare a stock material at the beginning of, let's say, the month or the week, and then when a prescription comes in, click in a cartridge and hit go. No more having to melt stuff and mess around with that tedious process to make those final dosage forms. You can come back a little while later and put things in a package and give them to the patients.
So one of the things that I saw from the technology, because I'm always the safety guy and the guy who wants to look at it from a personnel exposure, how's it going to be from hazardous, non-hazardous, and what I see is the interesting thing about this is that it is loaded as an aqueous solution, and so therefore all of the mixing and the blending of the dry goods actually is going to happen inside of the primary engineering control, which is of course going to be the hood. So tell us what some of the advantages, because I know early on in our discussions from probably a year ago when we first started and I saw this technology for the first time, I was concerned about whether or not the equipment was going to have to be swabbed, what the technology was going to look like from a personnel exposure, and I think you guys have pretty much solved that by now.
Great points there, and I think we have actually solved a lot of those considerations now, because we do work, as you mentioned, with an aqueous base, where you do the initial mixing within your primary engineering controls. You can do it inside of the fume hood, for example, and once you make that formulation up, it is aqueous, and then it is placed inside of disposable cartridges, and that cartridge is then loaded into our 3D printer system, and no part of the printer actually touches any surface that the API was ever in contact with, and the build tray that it is printing onto is completely disposable and is even low cost, like even a wax paper type tray. So you don't have to worry about contamination of parts of the printer that you would then have to clean after. Everything the drug touches or the API touches and the inactives touch is simply disposed of when the cycle is finished. And because we don't have powders around, you don't have to worry about powders depositing in weird corners, nooks, crannies of the printer as well.
Interesting. So looking at the long-term cost, and I'm just wondering if maybe we've done some efficiency studies, some workflow studies, now that we're going to directly involve a process machine. Now, again, I've still got the manual labor up front, which I would have anyways, whereas the technician is weighing on an analytical balance, then they're mixing, they're possibly, triturating. So tell me, how are we solving or looking at this from a personnel labor perspective long-term, especially as we're building large batches?
Great point, Bryan. So the way we look at this is on a slightly larger scale. If you really look prescription by prescription and how batching's done today, you unfortunately seem to have to batch by both drug, dosage form, and strength. Now we're simplifying it so you can quote-unquote batch by simply drug and dosage form. So now that weighing step, that mixing step, happens fewer times. And on top of that, the preparation step is completely hands-off now. So, as a result, these folks can spend more of their time making these stock formulations instead of spending all of that time making each individual dosage form. And what you gain from that is not only these labor savings in the course of the day, you also get the potential to produce much more customized and personalized products. One of the possible products that we're really excited about as a company is the ability to really help patients find the correct dose or wean off of another product by providing very specifically tuned titration packs, for instance. If that were to happen today, making each individual dose a different one, that would be a days-long process. Whereas with our system, that's as easy as making 100 of the same dose. So not only do we have the ability to simplify and make the process for pharmacy technicians and pharmacists easier and make it a limited step where there are fewer possibilities of errors. People tend to, and there are many controls around making sure the right products are weighed out correctly and mixed correctly. So reducing the risk on that compliance front as well.
So that's interesting that you bring up that point, because a lot of times when people are building capsules, they have a back-end QC process where they're weighing some of the individual ones to make sure that there's a matching weight, and that's a little bit of a QC method. When you're doing 3D printing, what does the QC side of that look like on the back side after it comes off the printer?
Another great question and another opportunity for automation from our perspective as well. So we have a few technologies that we're developing, and depending on the dosage form and which ones prove out to be the most robust from a technology perspective, there are two options. One is a computer vision-based system, so this is purely software, where we have a camera built into the platform for other purposes to automate other steps in the process, but it could also be used to image the final dosage forms and make sure the correct size is being extruded for each of these doses. Another option, of course, that's more of a hardware feature that we are also looking at implementing and testing in the pilot to see which one's, again, more robust and more usable in this context, is by simply measuring out and having another check on the amount of volume extruded. Because as we know, if the concentration goes incorrectly, we can figure out the exact volume that should be going out the other end, and we can measure that with another means of hardware.
And just to add another point, one of the beauties of automation is that you have very high repeatability in between each step. So when we're testing these, we will test every tablet in an entire batch of either 30 or 90 to make via HPLC to ensure that we are accurately printing and producing these dosage forms. So just the very fact that we're using an automated system with some of these error checks built in gives us a really high degree of certainty on the end product.
So that is a great point. So really what phase you're in now is really still of a beta phase, although I understand that you actually sent the equipment out to some compounding pharmacies and had a real test sent. So have they actually taken product out and for that third-party analytical testing? Are you doing that testing in-house, or are you sending that out to third-party? Tell me how that real QC analytical dosage testing, so we make sure that we're getting consistent potency on the product.
Yes, we actually have some PhD chemists on the team who take safety and potency very seriously. So we do a combination of in-house and external lab testing. In-house, we will run dozens and dozens of HPLC tests. We will not only do internal method development, we'll also use methods that are used by the external testing labs, including USP monograph methods, etc. But then once we are confident with our internal testing data, we then do send out samples to external testing labs. And external testing labs for, let's say, water-based formulations have done for us beyond use date extending studies, whether that be potency over time or the more rigorous studies that we've had them perform, such as stability indicating assays.
So once you get all of this information and you've validated the process, the fact that the equipment works, the dosage form works, do you feel like that when the compounding pharmacy, if they were to purchase this piece of equipment, integrate it into their current workflow, integrate it into their production model, do you feel like they're also going to have to do rigorous or vigorous third-party testing, or do you feel like your data will support them long-term?
Our data will support them long term, and the beauty of an automated system that does report back to us if things start going wrong with the system, they will be alerted. We will know. It's hard to know when a technician's hand is getting a little tired and their accuracy is changing. But when the machine starts having changes over time, we have sensors that will be able to let us know that there's changes and let that pharmacist know, hey, it's not fully confident in what's being produced here. But we will provide that rigorous third-party testing to make sure that they do not need to reinvent the wheel and rerun that rigorous testing, and that's why we provide vetted formulations. Now, if that pharmacist wants to use this technology and make a completely new formulation with it that we haven't done the vetting and the due diligence on, they're free to do so. They just may have to do some of that external lab testing and vetting on their own.
So that's a great point, because the proposed current USP 795 goes really much more extensive now into BUD testing, and there's been a lot of pushback, and will continue to be a lot of pushback, because that's just not something that we've seen a lot of on the non-sterile side. So what I'm hearing from you is that you're going to have, and probably will continue to grow, your own formulation base that will provide that stability, that BUD data that they need, so that actually will not be money out of their pocket spent with a third-party testing analytical lab. So essentially this is going to be a long-term savings from an expense perspective if USP 795, as the proposal is written now, is in fact implemented later around December 1st or whenever it's implemented.
Certainly, we expect to see savings on the long term as we're paying for those tests, those bud extension tests for them, essentially. And on top of that, we have a very high degree of rigor with those tests. Stability indicating assays in our case are the gold standard, and we can provide that. And so not only does it save them upfront costs, it's a significant time savings, because those tests do take time. And so they can, right out of the gate with our system, know that they can be confident in extending those bud dates because we provided that information, and not have to wait for those for that time to pass for them to do it themselves.
In addition, of course, as we develop these formulations for our pilot to go out as well as for our future production to go out, the beauty of a software-controlled system is as we continue to develop formulations, those are instant updates that go out to your computers that run our software as soon as they're available. So you're not stuck with just the one or two formulations you see if you're a very first pilot customer. It's going to be a continual growing database that as we get more customers and grow the number of platforms out there, will expand to really meet the needs of compounding across the U.S. and in the future internationally.
So currently right now, the pharmacies are dealing maybe with a couple of different software integrations. If they're using a compounding formulation software, there's a couple of different those out there. Then they may be on the front end on the dispensing side dealing with yet another software, and there may or may not be an integration between those two softwares. How does your software integrate, or will it even need to integrate with their current software platforms?
Great question. We're always open to integrating our software with other preferred software vendors that are available. We know some of the popular dispensing ones and formulation record ones available for these compounders. Having a software background myself, I see some of these platforms and I see a lot of improvements and that could be gained from some changes. So depending on where people land, we're happy to pull data from other locations to simplify the data entry piece, because fewer steps as we stand by from a physical perspective also apply from a data entry perspective, and we want to minimize those as much as possible. And whether that means we grow out the software that does it itself directly or integrate really is going to come from our customers themselves.
So I'm standing here. Obviously, you can't stand here with me and see the technology. Maybe we'll try to hang a video on the podcast or a link to your website. And I understand that we're still in some early beta phasing, and we are rolling it out. I guess this is more of a soft launch, which is what we could probably call it at Componders on Capitol Hill. So tell us, what is the timeline for us to get the technology? So I know there's going to be a lot of people, especially Seth, my co-host, who unfortunately couldn't join us on this at the last minute. Running a pharmacy is an interesting business, and he's very interested in this technology because they do some extrusion process. They have a lot to do with the equine market and reproduction. So he was very interested in seeing this technology, and I know that a lot of our viewers or listeners out there will also be interested. So when can we expect to maybe see this product ready to go? Because I'd like to see it in a pharmacy soon.
We do too. We're very excited about it. We expect to have our first pilot units with the system that we have at CCH demoing available in the fall. We're doing a limited release, so we're looking for more pilot partners. We'd love to have, 10 to 20 available, and we have a few slots left. And what we really want from these guys is, there's going to be a bit of back and forth. We have a platform that's able to automate some of a process, but we love getting feedback from folks, even if they're not part of the pilot program, about what drugs they would love to see available on this platform, so we can start that process of getting that data, especially if we see a lot of demand for something. We can take that step forward and make that available, especially, like you mentioned, with 795 potentially coming out in the next year, and have that ready to go when we do our full production launch mid-next year.
So what we're asking for here to our audience, as always, is some active feedback on the things that you'd like to see. And I tell you what, so what is maybe the best way for some of our listeners out there to see the technology, to talk about the technology, and maybe answer some questions that I haven't come up with, because those are the folks that are in the trenches every day. They know what they're doing. So what is the best way for them to get into contact to learn more about the technology?
So definitely check out our website, vitaeindustries.com. And if you're listening to this specific podcast, we have a specific page for the CCH conference. If you just go to /CCH, you'll be able to join the pilot, and we'll have some special offers for people to sign up on that page, along with a survey with some of the information that we'd love as feedback. And as those sign-ups roll in, we will reach out to you, and there's a contact form on our website, along with, if you prefer to talk on the phone, you can try our office phone, and we'll pick up or, give you a ring back on a voicemail. So whichever mode of communication is preferred. But all of that information is on our website at, again, vitaeindustries.com.
So we're here actually in the Encore Scientific booth at Componders on Capitol Hill. They've been so nice to host the Pharmacy Inspection Podcast, which we genuinely appreciate Encore Scientific. But also, this piece of equipment is going to be an exclusive to Encore Scientific, because they always want to be at the forefront of getting the technology, getting the new thought processes, and just being a part of your business. The personal medication, we want to make sure that they're a partner in your business. So you can look at EncoreScientific.com, but Vitae Industries is spelled VITAE Industries.com. It is wonderful technology. So go to their website, look at the technology, but I think you're going to agree that 3D printing technology is going to be something awesome for the future of our business.
Thank you.